It's weird to think about because when you picture Brazil, you think of the Amazon and Carnival and Mega Jesus and
Fugir da realidade. Tem que deixar de ser país de Maria.
But in the 1800s, dare I say it, Brazil was probably the second most developed country in the Americas, depending on how you count pre-independence Canada. And with the way it was heading, it could have gone the way of the United States once the World Wars rolled around. So step with me back in time as I show you a world that might have been and where it all got screwed up. Now, if you want to change history and make Brazil the mightiest empire the world has ever seen, you should check out Call of War. See what I did there? You play as a nation of your choice and lead your men in a free-for-all with up to 100 other players, and if you play your cards right, you just might be the first to unlock the secrets of the world's most powerful weapons. I started a game with a bunch of viewers about a month ago, and, well, I had a plan. I was gonna protect my northern border with France by making an alliance with them while I rushed for North Africa, but then, France sent their entire army to South Africa, and Germany conquered the country in like 2 days. But on the bright side, I was able to coordinate a strike on Italy, and Germany was nice enough to spare me, so now we've got this weird suzerain thing going on, at least until North America needs an easy target and I become their punching bag. But every match is different, and if you think you've got what it takes to achieve world domination, you can go to the link in the description, search for Jack Rackam, and use the password Pedro. And you'll also get 13,000 gold and a month of high command to aid in your battle. Just be sure to learn from my mistakes. Alright, quick flashback. Pedro I, better known as Dom Pedro de Alcántara Francisco Antonio Juan Carlos Xavier de Paulo Miguel Rafael Joaquim José Gonzaga Pascual Cipriano Serafim de Bragança y Bourbon, he declared Brazil's independence from Portugal, even though he was also the heir to Portugal. Now, as far as decolonization goes, Brazil was in a pretty good spot compared to the rest of the continent. There was a war, sure, but it was only 3 years. More importantly, Brazil had already been raised to the status of a kingdom instead of being treated like a lot of former African colonies where there's barely any infrastructure beyond what's necessary to suck out all the resources, and that's in part because the royal family had been living in Rio ever since Napoleon chased them out of Europe. It had 3 branches of government, a constitutional monarchy, the emperor already had close ties with Europe. This was about as good of a transition as you were gonna get at the time. But then, of course, this happens. You know what? I'm going back to Portugal to help my daughter defeat her treacherous regent. Anyway, I'm leaving my 5-year-old son in charge under the care of a triumvirate of regents who will definitely not step over him and fight each other for power. Also, his guardian is the guy who has a track record of exiling political enemies and slandering me relentlessly. Take care. Amazingly, somehow, that guy Bonifacio gets dismissed without taking the whole government down with him. The only hurdle left was the fact that the future of the country depended on a 5-year-old stripped of a childhood and burdened with the future of 5 million people in his hands. No problem. And then things get so shaky the Brazilian government decides the best option available to them is to officially grant Pedro his full executive power at age 14. What could possibly go wrong? So that's it then. This is the guy who screwed up everything for Brazil. Well, you would think so, but we've still got 49 years left to go. Not only did little orphan Alcántara spend 12 hours a day alone studying, he also managed to get rid of everyone trying to take advantage of him without causing a fuss. Wish I could tell you how he did it, but that's the beauty. It was that discreet. I mean, it really was duty above all else with this guy. No parents, no friends, no free time, whatever it took to keep Brazil afloat. Although, some sacrifices were definitely bigger than others. He got married to a princess from Sicily, which just confirms that he was a Disney princess sitting in his gilded cage being married against his will. But he bottles up all those feelings until, for the first time in person, he lays eyes on his wife. Teresa Cristina Maria Giuseppa Gaspare Baltasare Melchiore Gennara Francesca de Padova Donata Bonassa Andrea d'Avellino Rita Luigarda Geltruda Venanzia Taddea Spiridione Rocca Matilde de Borbone delle Due Sicilie. And he breaks down crying, because she's like a little short and a bit overweight. His words to his governess were something along the lines of, "Oh, false ones, they have deceived me." He was too polite to do any of this in public, of course, but his wife saw right through him. They never hated each other, but love would definitely be a strong word. For the rest of the country, though, boy, this guy was great. He wasn't a figurehead, wasn't an autocrat. He believed in freedom of speech, freedom of the press, cooperated with both sides of the aisles, and didn't take no malarkey. And that kind of basic middle-of-the-road bipartisanship was really tough in his day and age. There was this whole thing with the Siquaremas. He had to team up with an old rival or something to basically redefine a political party. It'd probably be a great political drama, but it's all very technical. Same kind of reason I hated American history as a kid. So, okay, gotcha. Pedro too, great negotiator who lived long enough to do some good economy stuff, kinda boring. Not so fast there, buckaroo. Brazil wasn't just the top dog economically. Some Argentine dictator tried to take over a huge swath of the continent. Pedro put him down. Britain started boarding Brazilian ships and arresting slavers, and, well, this one needs some context. The African slave trade was outlawed in 1826, but if you thought the United States had a problem with slavery, Brazil was on a whole other level, so ain't nobody was enforcing that treaty. So what, Pedro too stands up for slavery, whoop-de-doo? No, he threatens to abdicate until a law gets passed that'll get the British off their backs by actually enforcing the ban. Then, when the British consul threatens to go to war over a couple other minor incidents, then Pedro gets ready for war, and the British back down. The British, the gall of this man. Same thing with Paraguay. They invade while the Brazilian army is busy dealing with Uruguay all the way down here, just to assert dominance, I guess. Classic Call of War move, kinda bizarre in real life. Pedro marches to the front line, personally takes command, and wins the war. Okay, he's a loose cannon who plays by his own rules, risking his life and the fate of the country, but ultimately bringing out the best in people. Hold your dang horses, we're not even at the best part. He was also the first photographer in Brazil and spoke 14 languages, including, for once, an actual native Brazilian language. In another life, he would have been a teacher, but cursed as he was to be the emperor, he built schools, used his personal income to pay for scholarships, and oh yeah, his pen pals included Wagner, Alexander Graham Bell, Nietzsche, Louis Pasteur, Victor Hugo, Darwin, the list goes on. This is the closest we've had to Marcus Aurelius in centuries. So, okay, he was just a man of unequaled curiosity and talent who, from a profound sense of duty, devoted his life to the single-minded focus of the strength of the empire and the well-being of its people, who sometimes resorted to brash and unorthodox means, but was on the whole exceptionally personable, and perhaps held a special interest in the education of future generations. Well, yes, just that. Except when it came to his daughter, whose future he ignored more than everyone ignores video descriptions. Music is all listed in there, I'm telling you, please. Well, that's not fair. He gave her a great education, it's just that he never actually bothered to show her how to run a country, never brought her to work, never talked politics with her, and it's not like he was too busy playing with her and teaching her how to ride a bike. This guy's emotionally stunted, remember? After his son died, he just kinda gave up on the idea of having a strong ruler to fill his place. The only experience she ever had was acting as a regent, once when Pedro left for a funeral, and once when he went on vacation. Took him till he was 51, but that midlife crisis hit him hard. He travels alone with his wife for the first time, and it's peaceful. And he realizes he loves his country, but man, oh man, he does not like being emperor. I'd love to say he finally found true happiness and the empire ran on its own, but, well, maybe if he trained his daughter more, but no, she was just a rubber stamp. Although she did get to be a rubber stamp for the bill that says you can't enslave newborn babies, so that's a nice piece of history to be a part of. Instead, Pedro keeps running on fumes for 10 years, going through the motions all by himself at Liv for Rikets Vel. The one last fire in his belly is abolishing slavery full stop, and he takes care of that in 1888. Oh Jesus, 1888, making the US look like a role model here. Of course, the former slave owners want a word with him, and the gosh darn whippersnappers in Parliament and the army don't even appreciate him anymore because the empire's been stable longer than they've been alive, so things could never go wrong. The emperor just needs to stay out of politics. But what are they gonna do, take his crown away? Oh no, how horrible. That's exactly what they do. The rich coffee farmers back up the military, and they arrest the prime minister and throw up an oligarchy. Pedro finds out he's just gotten kicked out of his job, but he stands a pretty good chance of taking it back. The elites might not have been happy with him, but for the majority of people, this guy was great. He was still super popular. He's the man who had built modern Brazil, who fought on the front lines for his country, who sacrificed his childhood for its security, his marriage for its diplomacy, his fatherhood for its industry, the man who never gave up, and he gave up. He gave up! The dude was exhausted, and the monarchy died without a fight. And so, in the following century that saw the United States swoop in and reap the benefits of not being blown to smithereens twice in 30 years, Brazil couldn't take full advantage of the situation, not under a parade of unstable republics and military dictatorships. Granted, Brazil was never quite up to the level of industrialization or population that the United States had, and who knows how things would have gone, but it's just sad to see a guy who gave his whole life for his country watch so much of his work come undone. Because he didn't spend his final years finally free living it up on some beach, he spent them in a small Parisian apartment, alone, arranging for his casket to be buried in soil from the country he could never return to in life. His very last words were a prayer for peace and prosperity in Brazil.